Hello, my name's Steve Highwood. I'm the Building and Infrastructure Market Sector Lead for Bureau Veritas UK. And I'm here today with Andy Lowe, the Technical and Training Director for our Building Control business, to discuss the government's recent regulation changes surrounding accessibility. So Andy, the government are busy updating the regulations on raising accessibility, particularly in new homes. What's this all about?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Well, the government thrust here and has been of the last 18 months or so on raising the quality of our housing stock. It's a very important aspect, and I guess in this current COVID situation has been highlighted even further. Making sure everyone's needs are accounted for, and that they can have comfortable homes to live in. So the challenge really is to upgrade during the life of a building to ensure that everyone's needs as they get older, they have different needs from the built environment that you're within, and this is really where the challenge is, to make sure that we can stay in your home rather than having to move around. And that's the thrust really that the government are intending with this consultation document, Steve.
Right. So would you say that this is a wild departure from the existing guidance that we see in the regulations currently?
I wouldn't say it's a particularly wild departure. I think, though, it is built on a bit of research that the government have undertaken. The original concept was to give the planning authority the responsibility for making optional standards for developers to incorporate into their housing developments, based on the fact that they would review their local needs from their population. I'm not sure that's really hit home and it has really been taken on board. So their research really is to try and drive it another way. Maybe the optional standards haven't worked in all cases. It is noticeable that, for instance, in London, that most developments, or larger developments for certain, have an aspiration to achieve 90% category 2 buildings, and category 3 at 10%, with no category 1, which is perhaps a little bit higher than the government originally intended. So that's the research that follows from of late has highlighted the fact that perhaps this has not been incorporated throughout England, bearing in mind that this construction document doesn't relate to anything other part of the UK other than England at the moment. So yeah, I think it's ongoing research, Steve.
So in terms of the content in this guidance document, can you explain, what the government's options are moving forwards?
Yeah, as you can see from the slide, the government have put forward 5 options. Option 1 was to await a further review on the planning policy on the technical standards. And what I think they're driving at there is they're not absolutely certain that all the planners have got a grip of this aspect. And ideally, they're looking to see whether it's a harder push in that area might make it greater in terms of the quality standard. Option 2 is a mandate to make sure that all developments as a minimum standard are M4 category 2, which is accessible dwellings, and removing the M41, which is what was known as the visitable standard, only by exception. So if you've got a flat above a garage, for instance, a single flat, then that might be the exception. And again, keeping in the M43, which is the wheelchair units, by allowing the local planners to advise on that particular part of the policy. The option 3 was to remove the M41 visitable standard in its entirety. So to remove it, which is what the current London plan has. It only has M42 and M43. Option 4 was an interesting little take on this. This sort of goes along in line with M42, but then takes away the allowance for the planning officers to be involved with actually the dictation of the number of units for M43, for instance. So it firmly puts it into the building regs, takes away any localized requirement, and just places it all into building regs with no M41, just an M42 and an M43, but with a bespoke percentage. So that might follow the current London plan, for instance, where you've got 90% of the development being M42 and 10% being M43, but with no M41. And then the final option, which is a bit of a mismatch really, is a change in the technical content to increase the M41 technical standards for accessibility and move more towards the M42. And whether that will gain any traction will be seen to be part of the consultation process. So that's the options the government have stated. Obviously, as I'm a building regs provider, I would prefer to see option 4, but we'll wait and see what the government come up with at the end of the consultation.
That's good. So in practical terms, what's the key difference between, you make reference to the M4 category 1 and category 2. So in simple terms, what's the difference?
Okay, so there's some major differences. The first M41 is defined as a visitable dwelling, but it does allow steps. And as you can see from the slide, there's a few captions there. It talks about having sloping sites that can have steps. The thresholds to doorways need to be 15 millimeters maximum. Entrance doors can be 775 millimeters wide, and there's some requirements for the internal corridor widths, which is shown in the little diagrams, normally between 900 and 1200. You are to provide a entrance level WC with an outward opening door, and the restrictions there are minimal, to say the least. And you need to follow the guidance for accessible sockets and switches. Those are the general considerations for what's called a visitable dwelling, which is the M4 category 1. If you then move on to the M42 aspect, then it says specifically you are to be step-free access, which includes flats. Okay, so you would need to have a lift to get in and up your development. The entrance doors get a bit wider, they get 850, because bearing in mind we're now into the accessibility aspects of trying to future-proof homes a little bit. And also you have to remember it's not just wheelchairs that can get through wider doors, but it's prams and that kind of scenario. So just need to be aware of that. You are also required to have a clear space around beds of 750 millimeters, which again is a restriction, so you can't build very small bedrooms. The WC provision now has to include, in this type of development, a potential for a level access shower, and that can cause some difficulties with the construction. And again, we've got some requirements for the accessible controls, switches, sockets, and indeed the heights of which window handle controls are provided. Again, all geared towards the aspect of people who are potentially becoming more disabled, and indeed potentially being elderly, and these features would certainly assist people during the life cycle of the dwelling.
Excellent. So we're all aware that the government have got a huge amount of challenges at the moment with the COVID pandemic, and we've got Brexit looming at the end of the year. So in terms of timescales, realistically, any idea of when this is going to be brought into play?
Well, the consultation is a relatively short one. It finishes on the 1st of December 20. I think in potential could be implementation in spring 21. It might well be in autumn due to the Brexit issue, although it's a relatively straightforward review of Part M. We've already seen the government bring in the changing places facilities very quickly after a consultation. So there is certainly a drive for it. And as I said before, Gendrick and his team are proposing these changes under planning laws to highlight the quality of homes, of which this plays a particular part. The London area obviously has the London plan, and this is already implemented in a lot of ways. So it's in some way, it is really bringing up the shires, if you like, to the same standards you would get in London, for instance. Now, the bigger departure for me is to remove it from the option from the planners and provide that into building regulations, clear guidance, so developers know where they stand, and it isn't beholden to a planning policy decision on a local plan, which in some instances has yet to be derived. So I think the short answer is we will see it potentially in some stage in 2021, which isn't that far away.
No, and certainly something that developers and architects need to start considering now, really. So finally, a couple of questions. One, where can people get hold of the consultation document? Because I'm sure there's going to be lots of people out there wanting to see the detail. And what else is likely to be introduced?
Okay, so firstly, the consultation document is on the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government website. It's actually called Raising Accessibility Standards for New Homes. And just be careful, it is about new homes. It isn't about existing premises or indeed change of use. So it's about when you create something new for the first time. And it is a consultation, as I say, and it will finish in the 1st of December. So what else is new? Well, the government have been piping on, I suppose, a little bit about the climate change. And the government have consulted on the Future Homes Standard and are likely to bring that in, certainly for the new homes part of it, very shortly in a stepped approach. So we're expecting that in this autumn, probably for implementation in the spring. And alongside that, we will see some other considerations for overheating analysis and Part L upgrades in terms of commercial buildings and indeed existing dwellings. So those will be the flavour of the month for the next few months, I'm sure. And as we go into the new year, we've got the incoming sprinkler issue for flats, which is over 11 metres, which comes in at the end of November. And we've got the change in places requirements that affect large venues for 350 or more. So those are the flavour of the month. The government are continuing to work on updates to approved document B, and I'm sure that next year we'll see some even more consultations on those kind of fire safety aspects.
Thanks very much, Andy. Yeah, that was really useful and very interesting. So Bureau Veritas UK is part of Bureau Veritas, a global testing, inspection and certification business operating in 140 countries globally. We provide regular news updates and webinars. Our webinars are also available on demand at our website, which is www.bureauveritas.co.uk. For future events and news articles, please follow us on LinkedIn, where you can find our homepage. Once again, thanks very much for joining us and have a good day.